there, Banditos. Welcome to another episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits on this August 31st. I am Joe Marcello.
And I'm Warren Phillips.
And look, there's no better way that I can really sugarcoat this for you, but the summer's over, guys. And the Dollar Bin Bandits are going to help usher in the fall. And there's no better way that we can do it, really, than our interview, or more specifically, Warren's interview, with Steve and Lily Butler. You may be familiar with Steve's work on the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book. Look, most recently, my kids are getting into Sonic, so they've discovered his work, and they are huge, huge fans of his.
Yeah, he's also worked on Silver Sable, Spider-Man. He's working on some projects for DC and other companies. And Lily is an up-and-coming colorist. She does some really fantastic work, not only with his art, but with other people's art as well. So it's cool to hear her perspective as a young person getting into the industry and his perspective as someone who's been in the industry for a while. So awesome episode, awesome people. Hope you enjoy it.
We're happy to be here. This is awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. So you guys are a father-daughter comic book tag team.
Yes.
What's the best part about working together?
I'll just come out and say it. There's nothing like working with your own flesh and blood.
Mhm.
Knowing that you've brought, she's been around comics her entire life. When she was just a baby, I was drawing the Sonic the Hedgehog. I had just gotten the gig of drawing Sonic the Hedgehog for Archie Comics. And she was just, not even 1 year old yet, born in 99.
Mm.
And I had just gotten the job of working for Archie. And I would hold. I was the Mr. Mom. I was the stay-at-home dad, and her mom. Her mom was working at a school, a local school, and so I was taking care of her during the day. And so I would be. I still had deadlines to meet, so I would have to stay up late at night. And during the day, I would stay up, and I would try to get a little bit of work done. But every time I would work, she was a dad. She's always been a daddy's girl, so I would hold her in my arms and rock her, and work with the other. I got kind of adept at it, but you do what you have to do. But I think some of that, if osmosis is a thing, this one right here's got it in spades, So anyway, that's kind of her origin story, actually.
What I like about working together is we do it all in house, so we do it all at home. So if I need any questions or if I need to talk to him about something, he's right here.
Hey, Dad.
Just holler for him. And because he's my dad, I don't have any issues with being like, hey, what do you think about this? Hey, that's not a very good idea. Let's change this. It's very easy to do that, and I kind of get like, if he has an idea and can't really articulate it into words, I get what he's saying.
She finishes my sentences. She's also there on the flip side. She's also there whenever I go, Lily, my computer won't come on. Come and help me. And so she's very tech savvy, and I am a Neanderthal.
Good to have. Now, Lily, was this always a goal to get into the comic industry, or is this something that sort of grew over time?
It definitely grew over the time. Ever since I was little, I knew I wanted to be an artist because it wasn't specifically comics. Like when I was in high school, I wanted to be an animator, and then we got an animation job, and then I figured out I don't want to do that. And then I just started to get jobs with him, and I was like, hey, I want to keep doing this. It did grow over the time.
Makes sense. Now, this question is going to be for both of you, but the landscape of comics has changed somewhat recently with independent comics. Things like Kickstarter and, backed books is getting to, I guess it would be the big three now, DC, Image, and Marvel. Is that the goal for so many, artists today? Or is it because there's so many outlets in the independent world, you could just sort of, take that route?
Dude, that is an awesome question. You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Because I think that we have similar but separate answers. My answer is this. I'm from another generation. I got my start in comics in 1989. And so it was still, all of the guys that I looked up to were still alive back then. They're all passed on now. And the way you got into comics was still the same as the way you got into it for a long time. The only difference was with my generation. I think my generation was the first generation that to work for Marvel and DC that it didn't have to live in New York City, because Federal Express. I sent pretty much everything that I did through the mail system with Federal Express. And working for Marvel in DC was a goal back then. I didn't start out there. I mean, I started out with First Comics and worked my way up. But I think that's what a lot of guys did from my generation. But working for Marvel and DC was kind of like the end goal. Once you made it there, you're there. You've made it. This is the thing, though. I made it there, and then I looked around and I said, "Is this it?" Because I stayed busy, and I'm so grateful, for Marvel, for First, Marvel, Archie, Dark Horse, all the companies that I work for, Valiant. I'm grateful for all of them because I learned new stuff at every place that I went. I had so many just great opportunities put before me, but I looked around and I'm like, man, I am killing myself working on all this stuff because the deadlines never stop. You're always against them, especially if you're on a regular book, and you're doing one issue after another, from month to month. It's grueling sometimes. In fact, a lot of times. And I guess even back then, before I was married to her mom, before she even came into the scene, I had in my mind, I want to do something more. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing something more. Didn't really know what, it was at that time. But it just took a little while to get here. And what I didn't know then is that, I was going to meet her mom, and then she was going to come around, and then everything was going to fit. Things happen at the right time for a reason, So anyway, that was my long roundabout way of explaining what my thoughts are. What are yours about?
So a lot of people my age, a lot of artists and creators, the end goal really isn't to work for a big comics company because it's so much easier to be able to produce your own work now, either posting a webcomic or do Kickstarter, Indiegogo to fund your own creations. And I think that's awesome. Personally, it might be cool to work for a company, but it's not something I'm working towards right now. It's so much, it's so much more appealing to me to make something that you love and you have your heart into. Right. And you're not working for a corporation.
We have done some work together we've done 2 jobs for Marvel in the past year, and done a few other things. You've illustrated some children's books, and but we doing our own comic, doing our own thing is
much more fulfilling.
Is really, it's really where we're at right now. I'm going to hold up this is a comic that you can even see it.
It's our background.
Oh, it's our background. Okay. Yes, it's not showing. Anyway, we did a comic called Fiona McCool and the Hound of Ulster, kind of taking on that same vibe as Sonic the Hedgehog, and putting a Irish mythology spin on it, and creating our own characters, but pulling them from Irish mythology, but in kind of like the lens of the funny animal Sonic the Hedgehog kind of vibe, and just had a blast with it.
And what we do with this,
bosses,
we wouldn't be able to do it if we worked for one of the corporations, one of the companies.
Exactly.
And it's really cool, being able to do what you want, like see your vision come through without other people, editing it and cutting it down. And I'm really,
which they do.
Yeah, I'm thankful that we're able to do it. Like it's a thing that exists. Like, we can just do it ourselves.
Right. And I mean, our fan base is modest, right now, but it's growing, and so the more we do, and the more effort we put into it, and the more we share. Social media is such a big thing now, and it can be used for bad things, but it also can be used for good things. It's just a tool, it's how you use it. I'm sure you guys know this exactly what I'm talking about with your channel. You do what you have to do to basically grow your brand, to put out what you want to put out, and we just want to keep it positive and keep on putting out these ideas that we have. I got tons of ideas swirling in my head, and now I feel like I'm at the starting gate, and I'm ready to plow through. But I've got to pull back and say one thing at a time, because in my mind I'm like, I can do this and I can do that, because I'm a fan of all kinds of genres. I love not just superheroes. I'm mostly known for superheroes. I love westerns. I love fantasy. I love barbarian stuff. I love horror. I love a little, because that's the kind of stuff I read growing up. And so I want to do all of that stuff. Mostly my adult life is become an exercise in fulfilling my childhood and recreating the stuff that I enjoyed as a child. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
And the question for you is: it seems like artists and creators now are learning from the past that if they have a good idea, it's maybe better to keep it in-house, where you can control the narrative, you can control how it goes going forward. As to in the past, if you brought it to Marvel and DC, it's Marvel and DC's, and they sort of take over. Do you think that's a mentality that a lot of younger artists and creators are having now?
Oh yeah, yeah, completely. Like all the ones that I've talked to or just like heard them talk, that's exactly their thoughts. I mean, there's some artists that want to work for the big companies and that's cool, but they don't really have, if they have their own ideas, they do it on the side anyways.
Correct.
You know, like there's this one artist who does the Teen Titans comics, and he did an Indiegogo campaign on the side. So some people juggle it. I mean, that's kind of hard to do, but most people I know, they just like, this is my idea. I'm going to do it myself. I'm not going to have anybody else have a say in it.
And I think most of it has something to do with why are you in this? What are you doing this for? Are you doing it because you love to do it, or are you doing it because you want to make a lot of money? Because if you're wanting to make a lot of money, then you're going to want to try to get it to those companies and sell it for the IP, you know. But
you also give up some control over what,
pretty much all
over what your basic thing is.
Right.
You do that.
Right. You hear those stories all the time about, I did this, I was excited about my character, did it for this company, and they took all the rights, and then they just kind of, look what happened to Simon and Schuster on Superman. I mean, this goes way, this goes way back. And so now what she was talking about before, you have more control because of there's more avenues that you can explore and self-publish. So, we're living in a good time, fun, exciting. It's kind of like the Wild West out there, but I like it. It's fun to do this stuff.
100%. Now I want to go back in a little bit of your career, Steve, too, because you worked on one of my favorite books, which is Badger.
Really? Okay.
I loved Badger. Yeah. I loved. You spoke to Mike Barron. You spoke to Ron Lim. I love to speak to Steve Rude, but jumping into those shoes, what was your introduction to the book, and how were you worked into writing or doing art for it?
Mm-hmm. Well, that goes back to my college days. This was around 1988, I guess it was. I was a student at the University of Southern Mississippi. We're Mississippi guys, and this was in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and I was I'd been there for maybe 2 years by that time, and I met two guys who were into the same type of stuff that I was into. Met a fellow artist, Mitch Bird, who went on to work. Great artist. Went on to do a lot of stuff for DC. He did Guy Gardner Warrior at DC and some other Green Lantern type stuff there. And also I met Roland Mann, who later became an editor at Malibu. But at the time we were all Mitch and I were roommates. Roland I met in a weird way because his wife came to our room, and she was campaigning for I think it was homecoming, like independent homecoming queen or whatever. And he was there, and I had something on the wall. It was some character that I'd drawn, and Roland said, "Who's into comics?" I said, "I am." He said, "I write comics. I draw comics. Let's get together." And so that's what we did. Came up with a concept called Cat and Mouse, which eventually got published by Malibu Graphics under their Aircel. Got published under their Aircel line. I'm sorry, this is going back almost 40 years. This is a long time ago. But while we were shopping the Cat and Mouse project around to different publishers, I mean, we sent it to everybody but Marvel and DC. So we got rejected by Eclipse and Dark Horse, I think, a couple more, but Malibu was who we finally went with, but first saw our stuff, and they said we're interested in this, but what about this guy over here that's doing the because there was another comic that I was drawing for that was in the package that we sent called, I can't even remember what the name of it was, but I penciled it. And so they said, who is this guy? We'd like to use him. And so that's how I got the job. Basically, Roland answered the phone and he said, they want to talk to you. And then he handed me the phone. And the next thing I knew, I was talking to Mike Barron. And he said, how would you like to draw the Badger? I need to process this a little. Because I was on the job. I was working at a bookstore at the time. And I had probably had a hands full of books that I was stocking, and I was on the phone with Mike Barron, and it wasn't long. I think I did 2 issues and still was working at the bookstore. And then I was able to when I got my first check, I was able to quit my job, and I haven't looked back ever since then. I've been doing this full time, and I worked on the Badger for about, seems like it was over a year, maybe a year and a half, something like that. And it was great. I followed all those guys, Jeff Butler, Bill Reinhold. No relation to Jeff Butler. A lot of people get us mixed up for some reason because we both worked on the same project. But yeah, Ron Lim, all those, Tim Vigil, a lot of those guys that worked on it before me, I'm friends with now. And but I didn't know them back then. I was young. I wanted to impress them. And so I did my best work on and they let me ink my covers. And so that was a lot of fun. And I wish that I not that I have any regrets, but I wish that I could have inked more of my stuff back in those days. I think that, but I just wasn't, they have, these books have to come out month to month to month. And so it's better to have that. At least at the time, it was better to delegate to delegate different jobs for people, penciler, inker, colorist, letterer, all that stuff. So yeah, I worked for them for about a year and had a blast. Just had a blast. It was the first company I'd ever worked for. I remember going to the first comics offices at one of the Chicago Comic Cons one year. My editor at the time, Bob Garcia, gave me a tour of the offices, and it was wild because I walked in there and there was my artwork hanging on the walls everywhere, and it was just a pretty cool feeling, But that was again, that's a long time ago. But it was my work on the Badger that got seen by the Marvel editors, and that's how I eventually, in fact, it was at that very same Chicago Comic Con that the Marvel editors started talking to me. So I don't think I was on Badger that long after that had happened, but they went out of business because of I think they filed for bankruptcy around that same year.
Gotcha. Yeah. Something you mentioned, and it's for both of you, and I've talked to other artists the same thing. Inking your own stuff.
Yeah.
How important is it to have that freedom, and how difficult is it to give up that freedom to somebody else?
Well, you give it up because you want to get paid. and if you're fast enough, you can, there's some guys who always ink their own stuff. I think of Tim Aparo did all of his inking. I don't know if anybody else ever inked him, but he proved himself to be on time I think his thing was, I do a page a day. That's pencils, inks, and he lettered his own stuff every day. This is the Brave and the Bold guy. But there's not a lot of people that do that. You when you think of artists, you think of John Byrne, Terry Austin, Jack Kirby, Joe Sennett, and some other guys that are linked together. You think of them as a team. Very few. Joe Kubert inked on pretty much Joe Kubert inked pretty much everything on his own, but he had such a unique style, and he could deliver it on time. So you think of freedom to do it, but you also you got to think of your speed, your ability, because these are monthly periodicals. So you gotta get it out. So it was a sacrifice, but I was willing to make it because I like to get paid, so anyway, that's how I see it. But I ink all my stuff now, the commissions that I do, and the only time that I don't ink is when she's inking me.
Same here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really have experience with working in the industry and have other people inking my stuff. The only time that somebody else has inked my pencils is him.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
We work different. She's all digital, and I'm all.
I mean, I'm mostly digital.
Right. I know you can do it the other, which
I prefer digital, yeah.
And I'm still old school, and so we work pretty well together. That that way.
We've created a flow.
Yeah.
I would say.
So.
See, I think that's that you do the old school way and she's doing digital, because it's two different worlds right now of people using both, and it seems both can create absolutely incredible stuff.
Yeah, we're kind of teaching each other too as we go, because there's a lot of stuff I don't know how to do digitally. She has one of those iPad Pro tablets that she does everything on, and a Clip Studio Paint, I think is what you use to color all of your, and letter. She made
I do everything in Clip Studio Paint.
She made these fonts out of my own handwriting, because we wanted our lettering on Fiona McCool to look as close to unique and as close to handwritten lettering as possible. And so she found this program that could convert hand-drawn alphabets into digital fonts, and it does make it gives it more of a, it's not as cold, it's more of a warm, if you understand what I'm saying. It's more of a, if it feels like it's more part of the art than stuck on, if that makes sense.
Makes sense, definitely.
Yeah.
Now jumping over to Silver Sable. This was a project that Marvel was very excited about. You had the foil cover, building up to it.
It was part of they had some kind of initiative going on, Big Guns or something like that. There was several, Luke Cage, and I think Terror Incorporated, and maybe one of the Punishers books was out, but it was like 4 books that came out, and Silver Sable was one of them. That was at the I know I got the job at the end of 91. I had been at Marvel for a year by that time, but I was doing what you call in the trenches type work, where I would be doing a fill-in here, or an inventory story there, or a backup story in an annual. That was one of the first jobs the first job I did was like an Avengers West Coast issue. And then I did like an X Factor annual. This was all in 91. And then I did a book called Double Dragon, a couple of issues of that for Kung Fu Thing, and some Spider-Man. I did some Web of Spider-Mans well before I did my actual run. And so it was toward the end of that year, end of 91, after I guess I had proven myself to be able to deliver in a timely fashion, that I got a call from Craig Anderson, who was the editor for the Silver Sable book, and I had to try out for it. I wasn't the first guy. I think they had went through Joe Quesada and maybe Jay Lee before I was even approached, and I had to try out. I did some trial pages and got the job. I think I was up against 2 or 3 other guys as well. So I don't know who they were, but I got the job. So I started that and did most of them. I had some fill-in issues, but most of that run I did all the, even after I got off the book, I still did the cover. So I think it lasted like 35 issues, and I think I did most all the covers for that one. Fun book, great editor to work with, great writer. Gregory Wright, who was known as a colorist before then, was the writer, and just a blast to work with. Had some good inkers, and it was a really good. I mean, that was my first Marvel ongoing series, and I couldn't have asked for a cooler team to work with. So anyway, it was a lot of fun. Got to draw all kind of characters, like guest star characters. That was around the time they were doing all the Jim Starlin Infinity, whatever they called it, and Infinity War, Infinity I don't even know what there were like numerous, the Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, Infinity Crusade. That's what it was. Yeah. And so I worked on several of those while I was on that, because everything was a crossover, you know. So I think the first issue had Spider-Man in it, so that was kind of like that was kind of foreshadowing was stuff that was going to be coming, I guess.
Now, when you get to start a book, from the very beginning, did they trust your vision of what Silver Sable should look like, or were you given sort of a template as to what they wanted and you just kind of worked off of that?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it was a little higgledy-piggledy as far as that goes. They gave me Ron Frenz's drawings of her, because he was the guy that, like, he and Tom DeFalco created her, the Amazing Spider-Man back in the late 80s. And Ron drew several, like, kind of like the Marvel style guide type of I forget what they're called, but the turnarounds. They did these turnarounds of the character, so I would know what she looked like on all sides. Of course, she had the shorter hair back then, and so I made sure that I stayed pretty close to his vision to start with. But the more I was on the book, the more she started becoming my own. I started adding my own stuff. By the time I had gotten off the book, her hair was like way down here, and she was pretty much my own creation. I changed up her costume a little bit, and I would throw in things here and there. But I did that as I got more comfortable, with not only drawing her, but working with my editor and my writer and everything. I felt like I had more freedom to work with the character like that and kind of mold her into how I saw her looking. So.
Now, for working with somebody else's character and somebody else's does that put a lot of more pressure on you as an artist to try to capture their vision, or do you feel like, you're going to put your own spin on it and that's how it's going to go?
I think it is. I think that all depends on who the artist is. I've heard several different artists say, John Romita Sr. would always say this: I was a good soldier, and I kind of had that same kind of old school mentality. And whenever I first start out, I want to be respectful of what came before, but I also know that I was hired because there was a certain look that I could bring to it. But it, like I said before, it came not all boom at one time. It came as a progressive thing. It kind of came a little bit slower. Now, if I just had one issue to do of the character, yeah, you pretty much have to follow. Say I was doing a fill-in issue from that was just a fill-in issue from somebody else's book, then I would try my best to try to match as close to the look, because you don't want the look to, in my mind, you don't want the look of a book to be jarring from one issue to the next. I mean, look at I don't know if you remember Moon Knight. I remember my buddy James Fry was drawing that book around the same time I was doing Silver Sable, and then boom, all of a sudden this Stephen Platt guy comes out and this cross hatching everywhere, and this Rob Liefeld looking stuff. It looked like an image. It looked like an image book, and it just took people by storm. And I was scratching my head like, wait a minute, this doesn't look. This looks almost like a completely different character. It has nothing to do with what had come before. So there was none of that gradual growing into the character. It was like, boom, this is me. This is new. But it, how can I argue against it, because that thing sold through the roof, sold like hotcakes. So I don't know. I think it all depends upon who the artist is, and so I just tend to, be, I guess, more respectful of the characters and how they've been depicted, and putting my own spin on it, but in a way that seems more natural than an atomic bomb being, blown up in a completely different look, coming up. I don't know. I don't follow books so much anymore. I look at them every now and then. And so, and I don't, it seems like today when a different artist comes on it, there's a new spin on it almost immediately. And so the continuity of the look of the book doesn't matter as much now as it used to back in the day. John Romita took over after Jack Kirby left the Fantastic Four. He didn't stay on there very long, but he respected Kirby's work enough that you could tell it wasn't Kirby doing it, but it looked close enough to Kirby that it wasn't a jarring thing. Same thing when John Buscema took over after Romita left. It still kept that same that visual aesthetic, And to me, that's important. If the characters and story are important to you, and I think the good editors have to be good stewards, of that as well. Anyway.
I agree with him. A lot of the stuff I do a lot of coloring jobs, and I try to mimic the coloring style of the reference I'm using.
Yeah.
Like I don't try to do anything crazy. I'm be like, oh, they use this coloring this way. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to color pick and use the same blending techniques.
Right.
Try my best to.
That makes sense. Now, this is I guess a strange question, but for Lily, do you prefer, like your dad was saying, it's sort of two camps, the pre-image style of art or the image post style, which was the bigger guns, the pockets, more in your face style of it?
On Todd McFarlane's place talking about. He was raised on manga and still is, so she knows this stuff, but you're more into the classic stuff.
Yeah. I like pretty pictures.
I used to read Jack Kirby monster stories.
I love Jack Kirby's work.
As a kid, she would get Dr. Seuss one night, and then it would be Tim Boo Ba the next night, or Gugam.
I knew Groot before he was on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
I see what you mean. I prefer the classic stuff than I do like the other stuff like the Spawn or the post image stuff, but I do prefer like the more classic stuff because like what he said, that's kind of what I was raised on.
Right.
But I do appreciate a lot of different styles. Like I really like manga, and there's like a lot of different styles in that. And I don't know, I really like looking at artists' different styles, and there's something to love about just.
There's also something to be said. I don't know if you're out in the mall or if you're out at wherever, you're gonna find these kids, and superhero merchandise is everywhere. It's on t-shirts everywhere. But I see a majority of it with the classic style.
Yeah.
Well, there's a John Romita shirt. There's a Gene Colan Iron Man. There's a Jack Kirby, stuff that kids are wearing, and they have no clue who these guys, who these artists are that create. They just know that it looks cool, And so there's something to be said about that classic style lasting all of these years. Not that there's not any of there's McFarlane shirts out there and things like that, but I see the bulk of what I see not only on t-shirts, on shoes, backpacks, every kind of merchandise you can think of. It's got that classic feel to it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I really like the classic style, how they're mostly bold lines.
Yes.
And what we were talking about earlier about consistency and styles, they're very recognizable because they mostly look the same. Spider-Man looks like Spider-Man. Superman, for the most part, looks like Superman. There's not a whole lot of changing within the style.
Right.
And I think that's and it's very nostalgic for people now. And I think that's why we see it on so much apparel.
You think nostalgia is what's fueling
a big part, yeah. And that's what most people know about when they like, oh, Spider-Man, they're going to look at, classic Spider-Man.
Right. I think nostalgia is fueling it for us, for our age group, but you guys who wasn't raised on that, I think something else might be going on. I think it might be going back to what we were talking about earlier, is that those bold colors, the bold lines, simple.
That's what I'm drawn towards.
Yeah. Anyway, we're waxing philosophy.
No, I it's 110%. I'm right there with you. And speaking of nostalgia, I mean, you got to work on pretty much the cornerstone of Marvel, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
When you get told you're going to be working on the book, what's going through your mind?
Well, I didn't tell them to give me a second to think about it. What happened was I got approached by the Spider-Man editor Danny Fingeroff,
Mhm.
and he asked me. I had already done some work for him, so I knew him. I had done some fill-in Web of Spider-Man work like back in 91. So I knew who he was. And whenever he called me and asked me if I'd be interested in doing some stuff for him, I'm like, yeah, sure. What you got? And he said, we got this one comic called Night Watch. And I said, okay, what is that? And then I guess you might know what Night Watch is. Night Watch was basically Marvel's answer to Spawn. He was kind of like their clone. Here we go with the clone thing. Their clone of Spawn. And he looked cool, but you could tell just by looking at him that he was a Spawn clone, which Spawn was pretty much a Prowler clone as far as the look. Anyway, we could go down a rabbit hole with that. I did a couple of covers. I was excited. I said, he might be a ripoff, but I'm going to make him the best looking ripoff I can make. And so I did three. I did three covers, and I was waiting on my first script. And I got a call, and I said, oh, here it is. He's going to tell me, look out, here we're about to fax you. Back in the days of fax machines, we're going to fax you the script. And then and instead he said about that Night Watch gig. I said, yeah. He said, I think we're going to assign that to somebody else. I'm like, say what? What are you talking? He said, because we want to give you the Web of Spider-Man book if you're interested. I said, when do I start, man? And I think I got a script that very day to start on the Web of Spider-Man. And then he said, I might need to explain a few things to you because it was right before they launched that whole Clone Saga. And I'm like, holy mackerel, I'm about to draw Spider-Man and they're doing this to him. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a wild ride. I'm in. And a lot of people ask me, in fact, even earlier today, people asked, did you create the Scarlet Spider? No, I didn't create it had already been created by committee. We want to bring back, you could actually say Jerry Conway created him because he first appeared way back in the early 70s.
Really?
In that Jackal saga thing that they did back when Ross Andru was drawing the book. But so they were basically bringing him back, and I think Tom Lyle, who was drawing the adjectiveless Spider-Man book at the time, and Mark Bagley, who was drawing Amazing Spider-Man, had they worked together and created a bunch of different. That's how they did it back then. Hey, we got this new guy called Scarlet Spider. We need you to come up with some ideas, and they mixed and matched until they got the right, the hoodie and all that, all of that stuff. And then they did the same thing with Kane, who was the evil clone. And I actually got to work on him. They didn't take my ideas, but I actually got to work on that. But whenever I had gotten onto that, they had already had the story established. And at the time they said, yes, Ben will become Spider-Man. And they made it sound like it was going to be a permanent done deal, and so from here on out, Peter Parker is off living his life, his married, happy life, and Ben is going to be the guy. I'm like, okay, this is going to this is a little bit different. We'll see how it goes. And then I started working on it. Just I would say I had a blast, but it was grueling. The schedule was, I was on a first name basis with that Federal Express guy. I tell you, it was almost every other day. I was, trying to beat the traffic to drop my pages that I had done, and because they everything seemed like we were behind the schedule before we even started,
Okay.
And so I usually a 22-page comic, which was a standard comic, I usually had around 2 weeks to draw one of those. So I was having to crank out 2, sometimes 3 pages a day. And so that's why you'll see in the credits of that whole Clone Saga part that I did, you would see like not layouts, we call them thumbnails either, breakdowns. You'd have breakdowns, which basically was full of pencils. I just didn't color in with pencil. It was like X here to mark what's going to be solid, solid black. Yeah, and then sent it to the editor, who then sent it to the inker. I don't know how we got it all done, but we did. And so yeah, that was and I don't think it was supposed to last as long as it did, but the sales came in and it was really good. And so they said, hey, let's ride this wave as long as we can, but I think somebody jumped the shark somewhere down the line. But, I say that because as many detractors as that whole Clone Saga has, it also has a lot of fans.
Oh yeah.
And Ben Riley, he's still to this day, the guy is my bread and butter. So as far as like doing commissions and doing and signing autographs and just everything, it's all about that Clone Saga, with a lot of people. So it's got a pretty solid fan base there.
Yeah, as we said, we had Howard Mackey and Terry Kavanaugh on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They were talking about how sales got involved. And it was like, okay, guys, well, let's stretch this out a little longer.
Yeah. Yeah.
For you, I'm sure in your mind you had a way of where you thought this story should have gone and how maybe it should have ended. If it was up to you, how would you have wrapped up the Clone Saga?
I would have liked to have known what was happening from one issue to another. That's the thing, because I had no clue what was going on. One issue he was fighting Craven the Hunter's son, and then the next issue he would be fighting the Lizard or somebody, and then and like, how did he get from point A to point F over here? But because I didn't see what all the other books that were doing. Because one book, I guess it would, Amazing Spider-Man went into Peter Parker, went into Adjectiveless Spider-Man, went to Web of Spider-Man, went to an annual, and then back over. And I never knew what was going on from month to month or week to week, literally. And so I would have just liked to have known what was, because I wasn't privy to any of this knowledge. You hear about artists and writers going to these summits and having these summits where they plan out a year or 2 years. That never happened. Never happened with us. It was like, here's the script or the plot, because we were still working in old school Stan Lee plot first style back then. Here it is. Have at it. And if you have any questions, try to figure it out yourself, because we're too busy. But that's what I was paid to do. So I did it to the best of my ability. And it was a blast. I had fun with it. I got to draw all kind of characters. Tombstone. I got to draw Green Goblin. I got to draw Gwen Stacy. Well, a clone of Gwen Stacy. But anyway, it was all fun stuff. That I got to draw. I don't have any regrets. But I got off of it. It was still, I guess, up here. The Clone Saga I'm talking about. I got off of it to go work for Malibu at the time, and the reason why I did that is because the editor said, "Hey, we're canceling Web of Spider-Man." He didn't tell me we're starting up with Web of Scarlet Spider, but anyway, these guys at Malibu were wanting me to come over and work for them. Got to work with George Perez. That was awesome. On a Ultra Force. And then I took over the book after that, but that didn't last very long either. So it was because it was during that mid '90s, and it was the whole comic industry, especially Marvel, was in upheaval, at the time. And so, but it was a roller coaster. But I stayed busy the whole time, so I can't complain. Yeah, but it is what it is.
And just on something that I spoke about earlier is that you had a good run on Spider-Man. Nowadays, comic books, it doesn't seem like, I'm like you, I don't read a lot of the new stuff, but it's like nobody really has a very long run. You don't see an artist with a 2-year run on a book or a writer with a long run. Do you think that's just because the publishers want to keep things fresh, or do you think it's because folks just don't want that kind of length on a book for a certain amount of time?
Yeah, I think the nature of periodicals has changed. I keep hearing the people say, oh, they're writing for the trade, or they're doing this for the trade, meaning they're kind of like creating what 6 issues of storyline for this one particular writer artist team, put out the trade paperback that collects that, and then they get a new writer artist team that they can tell, we got a new writer artist team on this book to kind of draw more interest back to the book. And like, well, what happened to the other guys? Well, they got shifted over to the Hulk, or whatever. Kind of like back in the day when John Byrne and the left Alpha Flight to do the Hulk, and the Hulk guys went over onto Alpha Flight. They did that as kind of like an agreed upon thing. Now I think it's just par for the course, that you're on this title for this amount, enough to give us a trade, a trade paper. But I know there's some, like the one guy that does the Immortal Hulk or whatever, that was kind of a long run, got several trades out of that, but still I think their goal is different than what it used to be, back whenever I was working there and before, because it was still holding on to that model that Stan Lee and his guys had started back in the 60s of that, periodical. And you can have arcs, 3-4 issue arcs and with subplots and stuff, but the book continues on, and you're not thinking in terms of, we got to get everything encapsulated in 5 issues so we can do a trade paperback and then start all over again with another team. But it seems like it's the mentality is just a little bit different now. At least that's how I viewed it.
Now, Lily, would you be doing a long run on a book? Or would you like to prefer, little things here and there with different books to try out, different styles and different stories?
I think I would probably get not bored, but kind of in the monotony of doing something for a long time. I really like the idea, because right now I have my hands in a bunch of different pots right now, and I like it. I like doing a whole bunch of different things in a different project.
And your interests are varied.
Yeah. Very varied.
Yeah. But back in the day, I keep going back to Jack Kirby. He's my favorite comic artist, and all those guys during that time, Alex, John Romita, John Buscema, Sal Buscema, all those guys, they could draw anything, and they were called on to draw anything because they were different. They were more than just superhero genre in comics. You had westerns, you had horror, mystery, you had war, you had romance. Never picked those up, but the romances were out there, and they were all, they all sold by the same company, and so those guys worked on. They had to know how to draw all of this and tell the stories. Yeah. I like that word, versatile. So anyway, that's the mentality I was raised on, because I read all of those different types of comics whenever I was growing up, and that's the kind of, I'm like, I'd like to try my hand at a Western. I'd like to do a fantasy, a barbarian, or maybe not romance, but yeah. But I've done the Sonic the Hedgehog. That's the funny animal. Back when I was little, I read Casper the Friendly Ghost and Hot Stuff and all of that from Harvey, and I read Archie, and I read all of that was available, and still is. But it seems like people find niches to get into. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades when it comes to the stuff that I'm into in comics.
And the stuff you do.
I'd kind of like to. I like to put my hands in all these different pots.
I guess that's why I'm the way I am.
She gets it honest.
So let's talk about Sonic is sort of taken off the past few years.
Yeah,
you were one of the first guys to draw it. How did the project fall into your lap?
Through Marvel of all places. This would have been 97, I guess it was, and all of the work at Marvel had dried up because Marvel declared bankruptcy, and there was a time when all of the editors got fired that I knew there, and I didn't have any contacts whatsoever. So I found a little bit of work at Valiant, and I worked for them until they declared bankruptcy and they went out of business. Did some work for a coloring book company, did some Hercules and Xena coloring books for, I can't even remember the name of the company, but it kept me going there for a while. I did a Marvel style guide. I did, it wasn't comics, but I still see my work on T-shirts and stuff. Worked with Bill Sienkiewicz on that, where he was inking my stuff, and then I got a call from an inker. She was Pam Eklund was her name. She was my inker on Silver Sable, and she said, "Hey, have you ever thought about doing any work for Archie Comics?" I said, "No, not really, but I'm game for anything right now." And she said, "Well, they do this comic called Sonic the Hedgehog." I said, "Oh, I know all about it." Well, I know about him. I didn't know. I had never read the comic before, but she said that they're looking for artists right now, and so I recommended you, and they said, "Oh, I remember that guy from Marvel," and so I did a little sample page, not even not a panel to panel type thing, just like a pinup type thing, and sent it in.
It's more of a
And
full page illustration than a pinup.
well, yeah, but I drew all the characters, and I kind of I studied what was there. There I go again, being a good soldier, looking at what came before, making my stuff kind of match that, because that's kind of when you draw the funny animal stuff, you kind of gotta have to draw what they call on model,
Yeah.
because the characters that have the fewest lines are the hardest to replicate, because one line off and you're way off. Mickey Mouse is a hard character. I know I've drawn Donald Duck. They're hard characters to draw because they're so exact. You got to be so exact, with the drawing. So I sent the Sonic thing off to the editor, and he said, "We love it." He said, "How would you like to do the book?" And I said, "Okay, sure, why not?" And so I wound up doing that book for
17 years.
Yeah, 17 years on and off. I didn't do every issue. There was like a rotating team of artists that they had on there, but I did a lot, not just Sonic, but a lot of their other Knuckles and Tails and all of the different characters that were in the universe. But I worked on that for a long time, pretty much her years of growing up.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing, was working on Sonic. That wasn't all I was doing. I was like working on numerous different projects, during that time, but Sonic was probably my mainstay, during that whole period. This was from 1998 to 2000, 15, I think, was the last was the last comic I drew for them. So long time. And again, those guys were awesome to work with. I even did some Betty and Veronica stuff back when they were doing this thing called The New Look, which they wanted to kind of break away from that Dan DeCarlo, Stan Goldberg look, and try more of a modern look. And so I did this the first. Now all of the Archie stuff looks like that, but I was kind of like the first guy to draw them in a new and different way. And so that was around 2004 or 5, something like that, when you were little still. But yeah, working, and I still stay in touch with the president of the company we're like, "Hey, Mike," we're good friends, stay in touch with him almost on a daily basis. So that's cool.
How did fans react to changing Archie? Because I know Archie fans are hardcore, and they don't,
They are, man. Yeah, especially the Sonic fans. I made the mistake of going on a message board one time. Okay, I think I'm going to just go back to my drawing board, and you can keep this message board stuff, because those guys get brutal with their responses and their accusations and stuff. But I worked on Sonic. It seems like it took different. There was a different attitude for different eras. There was a time when it was like, you can do whatever you want to. Free art, what do you call it? Artistic freedom, artistic choice, whatever. It was. It look cool. Yeah, you can make spikes 10 foot long coming behind him. Whatever. I always drew Sonic as if it was a superhero comic. Right. He's the Flash, pretty much, and so he was a funny animal character with noodly arms, but the way I set the shots up and the way I told the stories and the way I did the panels was no different than what I would be drawing Spider-Man or Silver Sable. And it was funny, but it also had it was also action. And that was the thing that I liked about it. I didn't know a whole lot about Sonic whenever I first started the book, but I found out that I liked the characters and I liked drawing it because there was more action in the Sonic comic than there was even in the Marvel comics that I drew. And I love that type of thing. And so I made it the best that I could. Then around 2010, 11, 12, something like that, it seems like there came a point where Sega was putting more, I don't know, pressure. They were putting more suggestions, well, we want you to start drawing it more on model, and I don't know if Sonic was I don't know if it had something to do with the games becoming really popular and they wanted that overall homogenous look. But still, even whenever I was drawing them more on model, it was when that Sonic X cartoon came out. If
that
you
was
remember.
earlier.
Yeah, and it had they wanted that look for all of the comics, and I still was able to draw the action that I wanted. I just kind of translated it into this certain style of drawing on model, but I still tried my best to keep that same action, going there. But yeah, it was great. It was a great job to have. Fun. I think I go to conventions now. I got to tell this. I go to conventions now, and I have people that have no idea that I drew Sonic. Oh, they make comics of Sonic. That's what I get from, and these are Marvel people, Marvel fans, whatever. But I get those Sonic fans that come in there. They not only don't know about that I drew Spider-Man before, they don't care. It's all about Sonic to them, and I'm one of those artists that I guess I straddle worlds, at the same show. I'll have people in line, and one will have a big stack of Sonic comics or want me to draw a sketch of Sonic, and the next one will want a Silver Sable, the next one will want a Badger. So I've had my hand in so many different things over the years that it keeps it lively at conventions.
Plus Marvel trading cards that you worked on.
That's right. Forgot about those. Yeah, I get quite a few. Of those still to this day that I sign.
Awesome. So what are you guys working on now together?
We're working on the second issue of Fiona McCool and the Hound of Ulster. In fact, I just literally started it the other day. I think I might have even shown you some of the thumbnails that I worked on. And once you get it started, and it took forever because my life now is an endless stream of commissions, it seems like, and I'm grateful for it. Social media changed that for me, being on Facebook and posting my stuff. It seems like it's one of those, if you build it, they will come kind of Field of Dreams kind of a thing. So where I'll do a commission, I'll post it, and then I'll get like 2 or 3 people saying, hey, I want one like that, or can you do this, or can you do that? And I haven't had to go out looking for commissions in years because of that. But that's a blessing, but it's also could be a curse because you could only be doing that and sacrifice that. And I'm a storyteller, I can sacrifice my storytelling and just do commissions. It's comfortable, but I don't want to get too comfortable. I still want to do our thing. And so I had to make myself, okay, I'm setting aside this day and I'm doing nothing but our own material, and I've got to do it every week, and so it's that mentality, setting the goal and sticking with it. And so that's where we're at right now. We're working on the second issue of Fiona McCool. Got a lot of other stuff in the works on down the road, but I got a whoa.
You only have 2 hands and so many hours in a day.
Rein yourself back in. You're doing the next issue of this, then you can go into and for this second issue, she's going to be doing some penciling
I'm excited.
because we're going to be kind of doing an origin story, and we're going to go back to the childhood of Fiona, and we're going to tell it in like a different kind of a, would you call it a chibi style, which is the
Yeah, like a little
manga.
cartoony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's going to be drawing that portion, and she's going to be inking the whole thing this time. So it's going to be more of a, before in the first issue, I wrote it, I penciled and inked it, and then she lettered, colored, and put it all formatted and put it all together. This time, all I'm doing is writing it, and I'm doing the thumbnails now, but I'm penciling it, and she's going to take the rest of it from there. So
and I'm really excited for it. I was like, let me do the bulk of it so it'll free you up for time, and plus I want the experience.
Yeah. You gotta get in there and get it. You won't know until you do it.
Exactly.
What it's like. So.
Now, Lily, do you see yourself going forward as more of a penciler, a colorist, an inker? What's the area that you want to maybe focus the most on, or do you want to be a jack of all trades and be able to do a little of all of it?
So recently and in the past, I have done a lot of coloring gigs. And while I'm very thankful for them, and I do like it, I like doing everything. I like drawing. I like inking my own pencils, and I like coloring my own stuff. I like doing all of it. I don't want to be just an inker, just a colorist. I like doing all of it, but I will do, each and every one. But if I had my druthers, I would be doing everything myself.
Gotcha.
I found that when you can pigeonhole yourself just by doing one thing. I know there's guys at Marvel who only ink. They're great artists, but they could only get ink work because they maybe not were as fast as a penciler as they were an inker, so they could make more money inking. But that gets old after a while whenever you got that creative urge inside you. And see, that's what we have to juggle, is that practical versus creative all the time. It's what can I do to pay the bills month to month?
Yeah.
What can I get but we're not like that. We're not cut out to be that way. I can't just do the minimum amount of work. I got to put everything into it. I do the same thing with my commission. Some other artists say, why do you put so much into your commissions? They're just commissions. I'm like, yeah, those guys are no different to me as an editor
and it's still your work that has your name attached to it.
So
you don't want to cut corners.
Yeah, I got to put everything that I can and everything that I do, because that's my name.
Yeah.
So.
No, your commissions, when you show them to me, a lot of them just blow my mind, man. I mean, they're absolutely incredible. They're, I'd frame them, put them in the middle of my house. There's that beautiful, and the detail you put in, it's
yeah.
Imagine really living with him and watching him do this like every day. I'd just stare at it and I'm like, you just started that this morning. How are you already done? And he's like, Lil, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I'm like, I can still be jealous. I don't have that speed yet.
One day.
One day.
What's the best way for fans to keep up with you guys, your latest projects, all that information?
I'm on Facebook. I have several different accounts there. Steve, you can reach me by Stephen Butler, and you could also I have a business page called Stephen Butler Studios, and I also have a fan page that I didn't create, but I kind of sort of run it by default or whatever, called the Butler's Brigade, which is my shirt. So Butler's Brigade is where you can find me on there. I have an Instagram, but I never post on it. She made it for me, and I have no idea how to work that thing. But I'm on there as Stephen Butler. Yeah, and I have
Butler Studios on there, and he has a Patreon.
I have a Patreon. That's right.
That is newly kicked off.
Just started it. Was it last month that we just started? That's another thing that I'm kind of slowly getting into this digital age that we live in.
And you have a YouTube channel.
I have a YouTube channel.
Stephen Butler Studios.
I should have just
No.
But yeah, all the links to those are on his Facebook, Stephen Butler Studios. He is on his Facebook account mostly, and he posts all of his new commissions. And on his Patreon, you get first look at his new work.
Right. What I usually do is whenever I finish commission, I put it on Patreon, and for the patrons that I have there, and then another couple of weeks I'll put it I'll put it on either, if it's a video, I'll put it on YouTube. If it's an artwork, I'll put it on, or post or whatever, I'll put it on Facebook.
Yep.
But you got the same thing too, right?
Yeah, I have Facebook. I'm Lily Butler on there. I have Instagram, Flowering Lily, and I have a TikTok, which is also Flowering Lily.
Haven't
That I
got to
post
it.
that I post art videos on.
Well, that's awesome.
And we're back. So, yeah, this was a great interview. You don't really hear about too many duos like this. You know, father and daughter, like you said, Oren, they have two completely different perspectives on the business. One, you know, kind of towards the latter part of his career in the comics, and another just really getting started. Really interesting. They're very, very nice people to talk to, it seems.
Yeah, it was a blast to talk to them. I can't wait to see some of the stuff that both of them are putting together and separately. So glad we have the chance to talk to them.
So look, you know what to do. You know, follow us on all the social stuff. This is where Mike does his thing. So we're not going to step on his toes here. But look, join us next week, and we'll see you next time.